The doorbell rang at 7:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. Mark Wilson stood frozen in his kitchen, a half-empty box of mac and cheese in one hand, his daughter's medication in the other. Nobody ever came to their door unannounced. Through the peephole, he saw the last person he expected, Catherine Reynolds, CEO of Meridian Technologies, his former boss of 8 years, standing on his weathered welcome mat in the rain. If you're enjoying this story so far, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to our channel for more emotional and inspiring content that reminds us of the humanity behind every workplace. 3 weeks earlier, Mark had walked into Catherine's office with trembling hands but resolute eyes. After 8 years as one of Meridian's most dedicated project managers, he'd placed his resignation letter on her immaculate desk. "I don't understand, Mark," Catherine had said, her normally composed face showing genuine confusion. "You're on track for the director position. The board specifically mentioned you last quarter." Mark had rehearsed this conversation countless times, but the words still caught in his throat. "Emma's condition has worsened. The specialists are recommending intensive therapy 3 days a week. I can't," his voice cracked, "I can't balance both anymore." Emma, his 12-year-old daughter, had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder 2 years after his wife Sarah's death from breast cancer. For 5 years, he'd managed to juggle being a single father to a chronically ill child with his demanding career. He'd become a master of hospital waiting rooms, conference calls taken from doctors' offices, and presentation slides created during late nights after Emma finally fell asleep. "Take a leave of absence," Catherine had suggested. "We can work something out." But Mark knew better. Meridian was facing its most critical product launch in years. The team was already stretched thin. A half-present project manager would only endanger the project and his colleagues' hard work. "I've thought this through," he'd said firmly. "Emma needs me full-time now. I've saved enough to get us through 6 months while I figure out something more flexible." Catherine had accepted his resignation with reluctance, her usual business-like efficiency replaced by an uncharacteristic silence as she'd walked him to the elevator on his last day. Now, 3 weeks later, she stood at his door, her normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled from the rain. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice carrying the same authoritative tone she used in board meetings. Mark stepped aside wordlessly, suddenly conscious of his worn sweatpants and the chaotic state of his small apartment. Toys and medical supplies competed for space with stacks of job applications and half-finished household projects. "Emma asleep?" Catherine asked, removing her wet coat. "Finally. The new medication makes it hard for her to settle," Mark explained, gesturing toward the living room. "What brings you here, Catherine?" She sat on the edge of his couch, looking strangely out of place in her tailored business attire amid the lived-in comfort of his home. "The Westlake project is falling apart," she stated bluntly. Mark felt a pang of guilt. The Westlake project had been his baby for nearly 2 years, a revolutionary healthcare management system that could transform patient care in rural communities. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said carefully. "Jason is capable. Jason quit yesterday." "Creative differences," he said. Catherine's mouth tightened. "The team is demoralized. 2 more have threatened to leave." Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm truly sorry, but I don't see how I can help. Emma's appointments take up most of my week, and the nights." "I'm not asking you to come back to the office," Catherine interrupted. "I'm proposing something different." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a tablet. "I've spent the last 3 weeks restructuring our remote work policy. The board approved it yesterday." Mark stared at her, confused. "I accepted you quitting, Mark." "I didn't accept losing you," she said, her professional facade cracking slightly. "You're not just a project manager. You're the heart of that team." She handed him the tablet displaying a contract. "Lead the project remotely. Set your own hours. We'll provide all the equipment you need here. The only requirement is a weekly video conference with the team." Mark scanned the document, his heart racing. The salary was even higher than before. "Why would you do this?" he asked, genuinely bewildered. Catherine was silent for a moment, her eyes drifting to a photo on his bookshelf, Mark, his late wife Sarah, and a much younger Emma at the beach. 8 years ago, when we were just a startup working out of that terrible office with the leaking ceiling, you stayed 3 nights straight to fix that critical bug before our first major client presentation, she said quietly. When I asked why you didn't go home, you said, because this matters. She met his eyes. Well, you matter too, Mark. To the company, to your team. We can adapt for the people worth keeping. Mark felt something loosen in his chest, a knot of anxiety he'd carried for years. There's more, Catherine continued, swiping to another screen. Our healthcare partner, Lifeline Medical, has a pediatric specialist in autoimmune disorders. Dr. Reeves. She's agreed to consult on Emma's case if you're interested. Mark's throat tightened. Dr. Reeves was one of the top specialists in the country, with a waiting list stretching months. How did you? I made some calls, Catherine said simply. That's what CEOs do. We solve problems. From down the hall came the sound of a small voice. Dad? Who's talking? Emma appeared in the doorway, her thin frame swimming in flannel pajamas, her bald head covered by a colorful knit beanie, a gift from Mark's former team when she'd started treatment. Catherine stood, smoothing her skirt nervously. Mark realized with a start that his formidable boss, who regularly faced down boardrooms of intimidating executives, was anxious about meeting his daughter. Emma, this is Ms. Reynolds. My boss, Mark said, the word feeling strange after weeks of unemployment. Emma studied Catherine with the solemn intensity only children who have spent too much time with adults can master. Former boss, she corrected. Dad quit so he could take me to my appointments. Catherine knelt to Emma's level, something Mark had never imagined the elegant CEO doing. Well, I'm hoping to be his boss again. But this time, he'd work from home so he can still take you wherever you need to go. Emma's eyes widened. Really? Because Dad's been really sad since he quit. He pretends he's not, but I can tell. He loved his job. Mark felt his cheeks flush as Catherine glanced up at him with a raised eyebrow. I loved the work, he admitted. And the people. The people miss you too, Catherine said. Especially on Donut Fridays. No one remembers to order the chocolate ones you always insisted on. Emma tugged at Catherine's sleeve. If Dad works for you again, can I see his office sometime? He said there's a room where the walls are all whiteboards and you can draw anywhere. Catherine smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her usually serious face. Absolutely. And maybe you could help us test the new app we're building. We need feedback from smart kids. As Emma chatted excitedly with Catherine about the possibilities, Mark watched in amazement. In his 8 years at Meridian, he'd never seen this side of his boss, warm, adaptable, human. Later, after Emma had been tucked back into bed with promises of future office visits, Mark and Catherine sat at his kitchen table finalizing details. Why did you really come here tonight? Mark asked as she prepared to leave. You could have emailed this proposal. Catherine paused, her professional mask slipping again. When my father died last year, you were the only person at the company who noticed something was wrong. You brought coffee to my office and just sat there while I pulled myself together. You didn't say anything about the meeting I was already late for. She looked down at her hands. I remembered that when I saw the team falling apart without you. Some people are irreplaceable, Mark. Not because of what they do, but because of who they are. As she stepped out into the night, the rain having stopped, she turned back. The company needs to evolve beyond the old ways of working. Maybe you're just the catalyst we needed. Mark stood in the doorway long after her car disappeared down the street, the contract clutched in his hand, feeling for the first time in years that he wouldn't have to choose between being a good father and having a fulfilling career. 6 months later, Mark sat in his home office, a converted spare bedroom now equipped with cutting-edge technology courtesy of Meridian. Through his window, he could see Emma playing in the backyard, her strength gradually returning under Dr. Reeves' treatment protocol. On his screen, his team celebrated the successful launch of the Westlake project, which had not only met but exceeded their targets. The new remote work policy had been expanded to other departments, with productivity actually increasing company-wide. As the team meeting ended, Catherine remained on the call. "The board wants to create a new position," she said without preamble. "Director of Flexible Work Integration. Overseeing remote teams, developing protocols for employees with caregiving responsibilities, creating systems that adapt to people rather than forcing people to adapt to systems." Mark smiled, understanding immediately. "And you want me to find candidates?" "I want you to take the position," Catherine corrected. "You've already been doing the job unofficially. Might as well get the title and compensation." Through the window, Mark watched as Emma attempted a cartwheel, something she hadn't had the strength to try in over a year. "I'll need to customize my schedule around Emma's appointments," he said. Catherine nodded. "I expected nothing less." As they discussed the details, Mark reflected on the night that had changed everything, not just for him and Emma, but potentially for countless other employees who no longer had to choose between their families and their careers. "You know," he said as their call was ending, "when you showed up at my door that night, I thought you were just trying to save the project." Catherine's expression softened. The project was important. But some things matter more. After the call ended, Mark joined Emma in the backyard, his laptop forgotten on his desk. As they practiced cartwheels together in the late afternoon sun, he thought about how sometimes the greatest professional innovation isn't a new technology or business model, but simply recognizing the full humanity of the people who make a company work. That night, as he tucked Emma into bed, she asked sleepily, "Are you happy you're working again, Dad?" Mark smoothed her hair, noticing the new growth beginning to cover her once bare scalp. "I am. But I'm happiest that I don't have to choose between being with you and doing work that matters." Emma yawned. "Ms. Catherine is pretty smart." "She is," Mark agreed. "She understood something important." "What's that?" Emma murmured, already drifting toward sleep. "That sometimes, the bravest thing a leader can do is change the rules when the rules aren't working anymore." As Emma fell asleep, Mark thought about how his story had spread through Meridian and beyond. 3 other companies in their industry had already adopted similar flexible work policies. A small revolution, started because one CEO had the courage to show up at an employee's door and say, "I accepted you quitting, not losing you." In the end, it wasn't just about saving a job or a project. It was about recognizing that the traditional boundaries between work and life were artificial, and sometimes, the most innovative solution is simply making room for humanity in the workplace. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If it moved you or made you think differently about workplace relationships, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We believe in sharing stories that remind us of our shared humanity and the positive changes possible when leaders choose compassion alongside competence. What workplace policies would make the biggest difference in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments below.